Welcome back to the Zag Talk podcast. I'm once again joined by my co-hosts Brian Mary and Carson Hollyoak. We got a short episode for you this week after only one game last week, our first exhibition game against Eastern Oregon. We'll go over a few takeaways from that game, some thoughts, how the team looked, maybe some underreactions, some overreactions, because there's definitely some of both. And then we'll talk about what we might be looking for in our exhibition game next Friday, or this upcoming Friday, I should say, against Lewis and Clark. We're not going to do a team preview by any means for Lewis and Clark, but we will talk about a few things we might be excited to see in the future. So stick with us, and we'll see you on the other side of the break. Opening up this week, Gonzaga had their first official game against Eastern Oregon, or I guess unofficial game against Eastern Oregon, as it wasn't exactly the secret scrimmage that other teams have been having this year. Doesn't go on anybody's record, luckily for Eastern Oregon, as we did thrump them. 115-62 was the final score. Great to just see guys back in the kennel with a full student section, with fans in the building. Just a cool thing to see. Glad everybody got streams working, as it wasn't a nationally televised game by any means. I'll save my takeaways for the end. Let's hop over to Brian. What do you got for quick takeaways from this game?
Yeah, quick takeaways. I think that we addressed our glaring weaknesses from last year. And these include just rebounding generally, especially on the offensive end. And also depth at all positions. I think that, last year was, arguably our best, our best 1 through 7 that we may have ever had. I mean, the 16-17 team might be in the conversation there too. But after that, I mean, we didn't have hardly any depth, especially at the 4 and 5 role, outside of Drew Timme and Anton Watson. So that's kind of my major takeaway. The glaring needs that we had in the offseason have been addressed to the nth degree with the additions of Chet Holmgren, and then Caden Perry, I think was a big surprise. The last thing I'll say here is that it seems like a lot of folks are pleasantly surprised with Nolan Hickman's performance. I think that for a lot of us who've been paying attention, like, we all kind of knew what he was capable of. We know what he is capable of and where he will be able to add value to this team. I think that what we saw in the game this last weekend is what we're going to continue to see, which is a lot of poise, fast hands on the defensive end, and making the patient and proper play. So I think those are my major takeaways. I mean, again, it's an exhibition game against an NAIA school, so I think the real tests will be when we jump into the regular season past these 2 exhibition games. Carson, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with your points there. I think Hickman, like you said, he plays like he's not a freshman, was the thing that I noticed. If you're comparing, obviously we got to look at a lot of the freshmen out there. There were some higher expectations for Chet, but in terms of the guards, you're looking at Hickman and Salas. Salas had some of those plays that, I mean, he looked great. I was impressed by Salas. That's the first time I've really gotten to see him live in game action other than highlights. But had some of those things where he's going to go driving into 4 people like Jalen did last year, and some of those mistakes. But Hickman just, like, you almost don't notice he's out there in a good way, because he just fits in. He's solid. He makes the right pass. He's not forcing anything. And even to the point where I think as he gets more comfortable, he'll be able to take advantage of his own scoring opportunities a little bit more, with a little less hesitation. I think that's the only thing that looked a little freshman, was he had a couple, and I think somebody else did too, where it was kind of like jab, pump fake, because they weren't really closing out. And then he finally took the shot out of rhythm. But no, I was really impressed with him. I think that's why he's going to have consistent minutes all year. I was surprised by the backup big situation in the front court. I thought that Greg and Perry would get in around the same time. They ended up actually playing similar minutes, I believe. Yeah.
Yep, 13 and 14 minutes apiece.
Yeah. But if you notice when they went in, Perry was the first off the bench between the two, and Greg really didn't come in until a lot later. We can get into that a little later, but I think overall, the biggest thing for me from a team perspective is the defensive potential of this team. I think is a lot higher than last year. We had a good defensive team last year. The overall athleticism, the ability to pressure with the length and athleticism of our backcourt guys, especially with Chet at the rim, I think that's going to be really helpful. Andrew Timme looked better as a rim protector. Not saying he's going to be a great rim protector, but that ability, a little more athleticism looked decent. I'll be interested to see if that carries over to real competitions rather than NAIA.
Yeah, I mean, we can talk a little bit about some of the stats too, good and bad. You mentioned defensive proficiency. Obviously, as we've said, NAIA school, the stats can be a little blown out of proportion. But that being said, we had 11 blocks as a team, 16 steals as a team, and we had 38 points off of turnovers. So we were getting turnovers and we were able to score off them. I know Holmgren had at least 2 where he got the board and then did, with his long arms, cocked the ball back and threw it all the way down court to a wide open player. And I think we're going to see that a lot this year. This team's going to get out and run because they have ability for guys like Holmgren specifically to get a rebound, turn, and fire right away down court with one arm, essentially. So I think that was really good. 2 things that stuck out to me in the, I don't even want to call them bad category, but not so great category. Free throws were not great, 61% as a team. Not a huge fan of that. Would have loved to see them capitalize on the free throws they were getting. Obviously doesn't affect the outcome of this game, but cannot do 61% against a team like Texas or Duke. That just won't fly. The other one was 3-point field goal percentage. Not terrible. 30% as a team. Would have loved to see Holmgren shoot more. He was 1 of 1 from 3. Nemhard was 0 of 4, and Strother took 6, but he did hit 3 of them. So those were kind of the guys I was looking for to be able to show an outside shot. Salas missed his. Hickman missed both of his. Would love to see them be able to stretch the floor and show some shooting. So show some shooting prowess. Bolton also went 0 of 3 from 3. So the 4 guards not being able to hit threes isn't awesome. Again, first game of the season, plenty of time to improve, not extremely worried, but of note from the box score, those were a couple of things that leapt out to me from the team. From a watching the game perspective, super awesome to see all of these guys get on the court. I mean, few got in there at the end. Graves ended up playing 5 minutes and scoring 7 points. So seeing a full team out there, not just the 9-10 guys that are going to play this season, was cool as well. I think last thing of note, Brian, I think you tweeted the video of Caden Perry on that drop step, almost a jump stop straight into a dunk on top of somebody. That type of athleticism. I mean, Julian Strother said it after the game. I incorrectly stated that he said that he has never seen somebody 6'10" that athletic. I said he's never seen Brandon Clark. I was quickly corrected by Carson that Brandon Clark was not indeed 6'10". He was 6'8". So the comment still stands, although I do think the athleticism there is quite comparable. I think, I was thinking about this the other day, I think that Caden Perry, and this isn't a knock on Watson, but I think that Caden Perry right now is showing what I think a lot of us hoped Anton Watson would do out of the gate last year. And I get that Anton Watson was coming back as, off of an injury, and we talked about all the struggles he went through last year. Obviously, I'm hoping he still has a great season this year, but Perry to be able to show that type of athleticism is kind of what I've been looking for out of somebody like Watson the last couple of years. Any thoughts on that one specifically, or anything statistically from the game?
My personal belief is that they have 2 completely different skill sets and roles now. I think that the decisiveness that Caden Perry shows when he attacks the basket is exactly what we should have, and I think we're all hoping for out of Anton Watson last year. With that said, I'm not expecting Caden Perry to be able to attack the basket from the perimeter, which is something that Anton Watson does bring to the table. And I think that Anton Watson is going to have the ability to be a little bit more flexible in the way that he plays this year. Whereas last year he was kind of pigeonholed into, playing under or near the rim a lot. And I think that it honestly benefits the team if he plays a little bit more on the perimeter, whereas Caden Perry should be under the rim as often as possible. So I think the roles are a little bit different, but I will say that the decisive moves in the paint, definitely would have wanted to see that out of Anton last year. But this year, based on how he played, it seems like, he's kind of going to be in a different role, playing a little bit more on the perimeter and hopefully is going to be kind of a menace on defense, which is going to be cool.
Yeah, and I should clarify, that wasn't a knock on Watson last year. I think he fit, once he got moved to the bench, he fit into the role that we were looking for at that point in the season. He was defensive. He was able to attack from the outside, not making a direct comparison between the two. But I just saw him go up and drop step and dunk that. And I was like, man, I would have loved to see Watson do that once or twice under the basket last season, because he does have that athleticism. Maybe not to the degree that Perry has it, but I do think he has the ability to do plays like that. I just think the mental game has been a little bit dragging on Watson, at least the last couple seasons. I loved what I saw out of him on Sunday, though.
I loved what I saw out of Perry this weekend as well. The confidence, like you guys were saying, was huge, especially as a freshman. I thought I was going to see a little more, I guess, him looking a little more like a freshman, but kind of raw athlete, out of control at times, maybe not having as put together of post moves as he did, but he was great. He was confident. It was direct. He wasn't trying to do too much. It was really get it, rip and go, or get it and just go straight up. And I think the guys on the broadcast for the game as well had said, look, for him, all he needs to do is be around the rim when a shot goes up for a rebound or a putback, which we saw multiple times. Again, NAIA school, you're going to have bigger bodies down there, but we know he has the athleticism and the frame to be able to compete for those balls. Other than that, we don't need him to be doing anything other than that. He's not going to be at the high post. He's not going to be on the perimeter. If he is, that's a problem. But yeah, I thought it was great. One thing I will say with the free throws, I had tweeted out in the first half saying, I think this is probably the best free throw shooting team that we're going to have in the last few years. I still wholeheartedly believe that. We shot 41% in the second half, even though some of that was guys that will be shooting free throws. But if I look at the guys who are going to be shooting the highest volume of free throws for this team, and they're all going to be pretty good free throw shooters, you think Chet is going to get a lot. Timme, not going to be the highest percentage, but hopefully he's shown some improvement from last year. It can get into the 70, 75 range. And then Strother, I think he's going to be great at the line if he can stay focused at late game situations. And then you also have, all your guards, besides maybe Nembhard, have really solid looking shots. So I think we'll be good there.
The starter shot 71%.
Yeah.
So not awful, right? But point still stands. That performance in the second half from the free throw line, definitely not ideal. To your point, Carson, the folks who are going to be shooting the most free throws didn't do terrible. So
yeah, I think as we're in closer games or more meaningful games, maybe that the attention span will maybe stay a little bit longer. Like we saw Strother after, which was really weird. We didn't talk about this because Strother had a great game, had 18 points in the first half, but he didn't come in the second half until 10 minutes in the second half. And I don't know what the situation was with that, if they just wanted to get some of the younger guys some run with different groups. But that seemed like a weird way to do it, considering they kept Nembhard and Chet and Timme in there as well. But when he came in, maybe it's just, he's been out for a while. Wasn't really, we were up by 50 at that point. I think we'll be fine from the free throw line, and actually relatively good compared to the last couple of years where that's been a bit of a struggle for us. But on another note, the whole Strother thing, I don't know if he was in the doghouse or something defensively, because we did see a few of the communication issues between some of the freshmen and Strother, which I think is just going to be part of the situation in the early part of the season. We're going to see some of those where there's a complete lapse defensively and be an easy bucket, but hopefully those get all tied up by the time we get towards the important part of the season.
Yeah, and I think, on the defensive note, there was some communication issues for team defense. That being said, I think Hickman and Salas both showed very good, strong, hard-nosed on-ball defense, not to the level of Jalen Suggs, where, he almost tackling people, not to make another football analogy about Jalen Suggs, but I do think like they showed a lot of energy right out of the gate. First game of the season, playing really hard defense, on-ball defense, and I think that's going to hopefully translate to some really good team defense down the road as well. The ability to back guys up if they're going to play that hard-nosed and aggressive on defense.
Yeah, to piggyback off of that, I kind of hit on it at the top of the show too, but I think a couple things here with defense and tempo. We're going to be able to be way more aggressive because of Chet at the rim. And also because of the depth that we have at the guard position and the big position, that allows those guards who already like to be aggressive and in the passing lanes, the ability to be even more aggressive and not have to worry about, like last year, Jalen would pick up his second foul in the first half and he goes to the bench. And so maybe he starts being a little more careful in the second half or even early in games because he knows he's going to go to the bench. This year you have, I think, more. Last year you had Aaron Cook on the bench who could come in and play. I think I'm more confident in Hickman and Salas to come in and be able to hold their own throughout the season without there being a severely noticeable drop. But along with that too, we had talked about with some of the Ken Pom ratings that came out a couple weeks ago and how the tempo was actually higher, faster than it was last year. And that was a little surprising. But I think what we saw on Sunday was that because of the way that we're going to be able to play defense and get out, that's probably what's going to lead to that tempo and getting those extra possessions, because we should be able to, have a few extra possessions off of fast breaks. And you got the guards like Hickman and Bolton, who's fast as shit, getting the ball up the court super, super fast. And you get some of the experience there too. I think Stephen Card posted a video of Bolton and Hickman had a miscommunication, led to an open shot. And Bolton was immediately pushing Hickman down the court, and it led to a Strother three on the opposite corner. So just the veteran leadership with that speed is going to be huge. And it's just going to kick up that tempo even more.
I think you hit on something super important, which, as aggressive as our guards are going to be able to play on defense this year, that rim protection that Chet and guys like Hayden are going to be able to bring to the table totally changes the way that we can play defense. Because, last season, an overplay, on maybe just even a pass on the perimeter, like if you overplay and a guy beats you, it's 2 points, right? Or a foul, right? This year it's 2 points or it's a block shot, which allows us to get out and run. I know that we can only, learn so much from one game, like it's small sample size, but the two stats that stuck out to me on the defensive end were that we forced 25 turnovers, which is 6 more than our season high from last year. And I think that's indicative of what you were talking about, Carson, which is that because this team can be more aggressive, we have more fouls to give. It's not imperative that a guy like Jalen Suggs or just one guy in particular, even if Andrew Nembhard gets in foul trouble, let's say he has 3 fouls in the first half, I feel fully confident that we'll be just fine with either Nolan Hickman or Roger Bolton bringing the ball up the floor, right? So we forced 25 turnovers, 6 more than our season high from last year. We had 16 steals, which, again, alone, you can say, well, yeah, maybe it's just, the level of the competition. Like, we were playing at an AI school. Sure, all true. 16 steals is double what we averaged last year. And in fact, it's 2 more than our season high from last year as well. So again, small sample size, but the stats back up everything that we're talking about. This team is going to be able to be much faster or much more aggressive on the defensive end. That'll allow us to get out and transition much more often. And at the end of the day, it's that rim protection that will allow us to be more aggressive on defense. So, but yeah, Rasheer Bolton, like fast as shit. I was like, I was so surprised by some of the plays that he made. I was like, yikes, that's tough for defenses to handle.
Just one name we haven't touched on too much, like it's been mentioned a couple of times, but Salas also looked really good. Obviously, Hickman actually played the most minutes that game. He played 26. He only had 3 points. He was 1 of 5 from the field, but he had 4 assists. He played, like we said, he played really well on defense. Showed, I think he'll be just fine. Salas played 18 minutes, had 11 points, went 5 of 7 from the field. Also, big one there, 7 rebounds for Hunter Salas. The ability for our guards to crash the boards on offense or on defense and then get the ball and either A, put it back up, or B, start to push the ball down court is going to be really important for this team, especially if Chet's the one blocking a shot. Our guards are going to have to be able to come in there quickly, collect, and push the ball up court if Chet's not the one collecting. So I loved what I saw of Hunter Salas. Did make the starting lineup. I know there was some talk about maybe Hickman sliding in there, maybe Salas sliding in there. It was what most people expected by the end of the offseason. It did end up being Nembhard, Bolton, Strother, Timme, Holmgren. I think that's what we'll see going forward. That being said, on Friday, anything you guys do want to see against our game, in our game against Lewis and Clark next Friday?
One of the things that I think was one of the overreactions I was going to hit on was the 3-point shooting. Everybody is acting like the sky was falling because, we shot 29% from 3. Nembhard was 0 for 4, Bolton 0 for 3. I'm interested to see what that looks like in the next game. I know, again, we're not going to see normal minutes from normal guys, and we're going to be seeing different lineups that we won't normally see. So that's going to play into it a little bit. Like, I don't know, looking here, we had over 8 or 10 of the 24 threes were from guys who aren't going to play a lot. But I think just seeing the confidence in who is taking what and what volume is going to be big because, I think that we're going to be fine shooting the ball, but I would like to see some of the guys get it going in. But in terms of the whole overreaction thing, I've seen there's some people on Twitter who are just more negative than others in terms of Gonzaga and 3-pointing, but this whole 3-pointers, but this whole idea that we have to be a great 3-point shooting team is kind of absurd to me. We have only shot in the last 5 seasons. We've had three of those seasons we've shot under 37% from 3, which doesn't even rank necessarily poorly in D1. It's in the top 100. We've only been in the top 25 once in the last 5 years, 3 times in the last 10 years. Haven't really shot anywhere close to 40% since Kevin Pangos and Kyle Wilcher were there. So I think if we can knock it down at a 36, if we can get to 37, that's great. But last year we shot 36.8%. If we can do that, we're fine because we're going to get so many of our points from inside. That's the other thing I looked at on KenPom was just our 3-point attempts per or over field goal attempts, your 3-point rate. And we're always in the low 30s as of late. So we're not shooting a ton of threes. We don't rely on threes for our offense. So this idea that we need to be great 3-point shooters is not accurate. And the idea that you have to be a great 3-point shooting team to win a national championship is also not accurate. The last 3 champions have been. Baylor last year was number 1. They're the only number 1 team in the last 10 years to win a national championship. But then you had Virginia and Villanova, who were both top 15. But other than that, North Carolina, when we lost to them, they were the 148th best team in 3-point shooting, shot 35%. Villanova in 2016 shot 36%. They were 105th. And you go back to some other ones, Louisville and UConn back in the early 2010s were both in the 200s, shot below 33%. So we're going to be all right. I would like to see Strother continue to shoot it at a high clip because I think we will need somebody who's consistent at that level. Like last year we had Corey who shot 44%. That's going to help. And then the other thing I want to look out for too is as we get into more competition, I don't know if that's going to happen on Friday or on the Tuesday after that, but how many how many threes Chet is taking per game, because I think he's going to knock it down at a high clip. But I was looking at some of the high school stats that he had available, which were not a lot, but he didn't shoot a ton from three, even though he shot like literally 54% on the U19 team this last summer and like 75% in another 5 games of stats that they had it, but he wasn't shooting a ton of them. So I don't know what that's going to look like this year, but it'll be something to keep an eye on, because that's something that could affect the averages as well, and just the overall team's ability to shoot.
Well, what will allow this team to flourish and maximize their potential is the ability to maximize offensive possessions. So I think that one thing that did make Baylor kind of deadly, and why they ended up being the national champion last year, is not just because of how well they could shoot, but because of their ability to both create turnovers on the defensive end, as well as offensive rebound. I think they ranked like 5th in the nation in offensive rebounding or something. Those two things created extra possessions for them. And then you essentially compound that with the ability to shoot the 3 ball. This year, we have the ability to be more aggressive on defense. We're going to create more possessions for ourselves. So we don't need to knock down a ton of threes, to your point, Carson. I think that, the defense will lead to offense, whether that's layups in transition or, a Drew Timme, whatever, Spinarooni for layups, in a quick offensive possession. So I think that it'd be a mistake to try and jack up a bunch of threes just because people say, oh, we can't shoot threes, so we need to start, making more threes. Like, no, if we have 80 possessions a game, like we're going to be just fine. We're going to score 90 plus points every game. And at that point, we just need to make sure that our defense can hold. So yeah, I don't know. I'm not as concerned this year, considering all of the other weaknesses from last year that have been converted into strengths.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't see how. Like you said, we're not going to be shooting more than 33% of our shots from 3. I think we have more guys on our team and on the court at the same time, depending on what the lineup is, that can shoot the 3 if needed. But like you said, like we didn't lose the national championship to like the difference between Baylor and us last year that led to a national championship for them rather than us was not the 3-point shooting ability. Like it was defense ruining or disrupting our offensive flow, creating turnovers, and then getting 5, 6, 7 attempts on offense every single time because of offensive rebounding. So that's just their strength. We know that ours is like we shoot an incredibly high percentage from inside the arc and around the rim, which I don't know if we're going to be at the level of last year, which was an all-time record, just because we don't have some of the experience that we do. And like that we did last year, we had some great finishers, but like we're still going to get a high volume around the rim with turnovers, with Timme, with Chet. So I think we're going to be perfectly fine. And I don't think 3-point shooting is anything that is any sort of prohibitor for us this year from being a good team.
We had 70 of our 115 points came in the paint. So volume is there.
Last year.
Yep. Volume is there to compete with that team. Also episode title, Drew Timme Spinarooni. I don't know what it is, but I love it.
He does this thing.
You mean his Drew? Okay,
spin cycle. The spin cycle. Yeah, the spin cycle.
Okay.
Spinarooni.
Okay. Spinarooni. Okay.
The Spinarooni. That's what it is. You're picturing it in your head. I'm putting the thought in your head. It doesn't need to be the exact freaking thing.
We're going to be in Vegas, and Brian's going to be in the crowd going, Spinarooni, baby! Everybody's going to be looking at him like, who the hell is this guy?
Can't wait.
I'm jealous you guys are going to Vegas. I definitely wish I could be there for that. Although secured tickets for the Friday game, so very excited to be in the kennel and see what looked like also a full student section for a vast majority, if not the entirety of the game, which was really cool. Not surprising coming off of a 2-year hiatus of students in the student section, or a year and a half, whatever you want to call it. Not surprising. Students are probably very excited to get back into an atmosphere like that more than they have been in the last, 10 years to see us play a team like Eastern Oregon, I think was really cool. It probably wasn't just freshmen as it might normally be at the beginning of the season. So really excited to see that in person on Friday.
You know what I realized when I was looking up some stuff for this episode was we didn't play any sort of exhibition last year, and I'm pretty sure secret scrimmages didn't happen. So this was really weird that it happened this year, and some of these maybe overreactions and just talk about this game are so different from last year, because I'm looking at who we played too. Our first 3 games, we had Kansas, Auburn, West Virginia, then Baylor, and a bunch of other crappy games got canceled, then Iowa. So we didn't play like a lower level team until Larry Owens was in town December 21st and 22nd. And then we played Virginia right after that. So like, it's just such a different feel this year, and getting that prep time, I think, is huge compared to last year, where we would have thrown all these freshmen into the fire with those games at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, and you get the confidence builder for, Greg played 13 minutes, Strawther played 18. We already talked about that. Salas played 18, Hickman 26, Perry 14, Bolton, who's new to the team, played 22. The ability for guys to get 3 games in before they play a team like Texas is the value on that is priceless. So I totally agree that being able to get those guys those minutes early has got to be a confidence booster going into later parts of the season.
So on Friday, they play the boys. They play Lewis Clark State. I didn't realize this, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong here. Lewis Clark State also lost in a national championship game last year.
That's what I heard on the broadcast.
Yeah. So pretty interesting matchup. So we'll have the runners up from NCAA and from NAIA in the same gym. It also looks like Lewis Clark State is starting the season off hot, to say the least. They've won their last 2 games. I mean, granted, they were playing, let's see, Yellowstone Christian College, but they won their last 2 games by 50 points. So they're beating up pretty bad on some of these other NAIA and low level teams. But with that said, I think all of us are just excited to see the Zags play again. Is there anything in particular that either of you are looking out for heading into this game? Carson, anything you're particularly interested in?
I don't know. I struggle to find really big things going into these games. It's more of like a watch and let it come to me, just because I don't, like we said, with some of these exhibition games, sure, they played in the national championship last year for NAIA. I don't know if they're NAIA Division 1 or Division 2. I think they also said on the broadcast that they had a few bigger guys leave, like important pieces leave. But I'm just still interested in seeing the freshmen and what they look like. It'll be a good opportunity for them to show consistency, especially with the backcourt group, and just how the different groups play, the different looks that we're giving defensively. That's something we haven't talked about yet, where we got to see a couple different versions of the press in terms of who was where. I think we saw Watson, which is what we're used to seeing at the top of the press. I think you'd said you saw Perry. I'd stepped away for a little, and then I came back, and suddenly Strawther was at the top of the press. So a lot of different things that we can throw at teams in terms of just different varieties of lineups. So that's probably the biggest thing for me, is just seeing the different lineups and what they look like, our style of play with different groups in there, because I think that's something we're going to see a lot more this year, or a lot more variety of this year, is different pairings, different groups of 5 going in and out than we did last year, where it was fairly limited.
I think I'm excited to see some more out of Ben Gregg. Perry obviously came off a little hotter than Greg probably did that first game. But Greg had half a season under his belt, and I'm really excited to see what he's been working on with this offseason, what he worked on second half of last year being with the team, and hopefully can really contribute off the bench. The vanilla gorilla is strong, so excited to see more from him.
one lineup pairing that we didn't actually see in the last game was Anton Watson, Chet Holmgren, and Drew Timme being on the floor all at the same time. And that was, I think, kind of something that us as fans were hoping to catch a glimpse of to see how that all worked. Not sure why that decision was, or why that decision was made, but I hope they try it out just for fun. And moving Chet to the 3, like could be some. I think that lineup could potentially matter later on once we kind of understand how different teams are matching up with us. So I'm just curious to see that how that lineup works.
What about Chet at the 1, another guard, and then Perry, Timme, and Watson?
Throw Strother in as the guard.
Strother in as the guard. The death line. No, I guess the opposite of the death lineup that the Warriors ran out there. The 3-point shooting lineup. The life lineup. I don't know what you want to call it, but I would love to see. I would love to see a all over 6-6 or all over 6-7 lineup.
Sounds like a really crowded paint to me.
Fair.
Chet can stretch the floor a little bit.
Chet and Julian can, but I don't know. Like I said, Perry isn't stepping out any further than 5 feet, I don't think. And then Timme, yeah, I guess he can, but he's not going to shoot it that much. I just had a thought that I blanked on. Something with Watson. Oh, seeing the lineup of Timme, Chet, and Watson. I think part of not seeing it may have been just the way the weird lineup rotations were working. I think you saw what was probably going to be, or is probably going to be, somewhat the norm in terms of the first substitutions and when people came in, who they came in for. But after that, when you start going way deeper into your bench than you normally would for longer periods of time, I think that probably threw it off, where, maybe Perry was coming in or Greg was coming in when Watson would have normally been coming back in or staying in, or Chet would have been coming in. So I think as we get into some more normal games where they're not trying to empty the whole entire bench for decent amounts of minutes, that we might see that lineup and against maybe bigger teams or in bigger games where there might be more of an advantage matchup wise for that. But against whoever, Eastern Oregon, this is probably just a little unfair.
What do you think that the team is trying to get out of these first 3 games in order to prepare for that Texas game on November 13th?
Probably just some of the just getting the groups used to playing with each other. Some of that, I don't even know, I'm blanking on the word for it, but just getting used to each other. I mean, you got a lot of guys with not a lot of experience in general and not a lot of experience with each other. You're really only looking at Timme and Nembhard, who have played significant minutes together. Obviously, Strother and Greg have been in practices for a year or so. But yeah, I think just getting that down, getting used to playing with each other is going to be the biggest thing. Getting some of those defensive miscommunications figured out, which I fully expect those not to be completely figured out by the time we get to Texas, even by the time we get to Duke. But hopefully, just finding areas to work on for those games, because we have a lot of prep time in between. So get the pain points figured out early and get working on those now while we can.
I think I'd like to see the guards rotation get a lot of runs with different looks from all the guards, 3 guard lineups, especially considering Carson, you've talked about how small Texas is. I mean, we can go big to counter that, or we can go small to try to guard that. We'll see what Gonzaga ends up going out with, but probably would like to see a lot of the guards get lots of runs together so they can, try to communicate as much as they can on defense to counter a lineup like Texas.
Yeah, agreed 100%. And I'm really hoping that in the half court, I'm hoping that the new guys, the young guns, can sort of, start to understand the rhythm of how some of the returners play, and like where, when is it Drew Timme's time to kind of take over a little bit? When is it time to kind of clear out and allow, a 2-man game to happen between Chet and Andrew Nembhard, right? When is it time to give Strother, put the ball in Strother's hands and allow him to make a play? So that's kind of going to be what I think will help in these first 3 games in preparation for Texas. And then I think, Texas is going to have a few games as well. So I'm hoping that we can get a little bit of game film on them to see how they play too. So really curious to see that.
Yeah, I think that's one thing, what you were talking about with Timme and the guys returning, kind of the go-to guys when it's their time to take over. I think that's one thing that is weird. Like we talked about earlier, how we didn't have exhibition games last year. So it was kind of right from the jump. You saw Timme take over, you saw Suggs take over in that Kansas game, and the stars really assert themselves right away. And I think that's something that maybe we won't see until the Texas game. I think Timme was less than aggressive offensively for a lot of the game because he didn't need to be. He didn't need to force anything. Still played well, and defensively he was a little more like, he was going after the blocks. Scares me every time he comes down because it looks so ungraceful. But I don't know if we'll see the full on takeover, like, okay, it's winning time, let's go kind of thing until the Texas game. But it'll just be good for them to get used to getting them the ball in their spots and getting to know where they like it, which I'm sure they're already working on in practice, but in a live situation. All right. Well, that covers the first exhibition game, first game of the 2021-2022 season. Zags are back in action on Friday night and then again on Tuesday for the first official game of the season. Tuesday the 9th, 8th?
9th?
Anybody got a calendar?
I know the Texas game's on the 13th, so whatever.
It is the 9th.
Tuesday.
It is the 9th.
9th.
And that's against Dixie State?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so yeah.
Cool.
Friday against Lewis and Clark State, and then Tuesday against Dixie State to start the season off before we head into Texas. So hope you enjoy watching the games this weekend or this weekend and early next week, and we'll get our coverage of those out to you guys and get ready for the Texas game and for the real fun to begin. So again, make sure if you haven't already to drop us a review and rating on Apple Podcasts, and shout out to Cowan Jenkins for editing our podcast.
Go Zags.
Go Zags.
Go Zags, baby.